You are listening to the Practicing the Art of Small Business podcast with Shannon Merlot and Julie Parker. Join their conversation about business, leadership, and the self-awareness journey to greater success.
Welcome, Julie, and welcome, listeners, to Practicing the Art of Small Business, episode 19. Julie, how are you, my dear?
I'm certainly magnificently well. Thanks, Shannon. How's everything in your world?
Great. And as we sort of said in our pre-work, things are on the up and up. I'm using your language. I've been gloriously active.
In other words, really ridiculously busy.
Gratefully consumed by activity.
It's all the glasses we look through life. Weird, isn't it? Sometimes we do it out of desperation. No, it's all good. I'm very pleased things have been on the up and up. And so in a sense, you've had progress, which was what we thought our topic was going to be about today.
It was going to be about today. Well, it is going to be about today. So we're talking today about the challenges of running a small business, and it's really that kind of cliche between on the business, in the business, but and I hate using the word, but in the busy of running the business, we can often kind of get caught in that business as usual, but not progress the things that are important in moving the business forward. And so that's what we're talking about today. And how do we get things done that is not normal activity, and why should we do it?
Such a great topic, Shannon. I mean, everybody out there listening will resonate with establishing goals, or I should be establishing goals, or I should be on that path to achieving those goals, but I'm just too busy every day to splice it all in. And just as a side thing, I've got my door to my office open to the backyard, and you can hear some lovely birds twittering possibly through the microphone. I hope it's not too distracting for everyone, but it's such a delightful day out there.
It's actually a lovely day. The sun is shining, and it's actually blue skies in Melbourne, which is lovely heading into winter. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about progressing things in the business. Now, is it worthwhile sharing a story around how this came up, Julie?
Well, I personally love your stories, Shannon, so please go right ahead. I speak on behalf of everyone.
If you don't agree, please feel free to email me feedback. Happy to hear it. So I'm conscious not to breach confidentiality with my client, because they will know that it's them if I talk about this. So I may embellish or move things around and change things just for confidentiality reasons. This client that I've been working with for a while, we have a really good program that we work off. So we're working to a strategic plan. Each year we do annual forecasting and planning. We do we're always in our meetings, we're always checking on our success metrics. We've got a scorecard that we're reporting on quite regularly, and we're tracking things. And this is through the work that we've been doing over a long period of time. And the reason I say that this particular client is like that is some clients, we don't have that level of structure. We're, dealing with leadership stuff independent of business goals, so that's okay. But this one, we've got strategic plan. Each year we're setting priorities. Each year we're looking at things that we need to do to progress the business towards the strategic priorities. And the team had gotten back to the owner and said, "Where are we at with this?" And the owner said, "Shannon, where are we at with this?" And I said, "Huh?" Now, I know that this client has had an incredible last couple of months. Like, they've had the biggest couple of months in their business ever. And they are so in the business at the moment that part of me pulling back a little bit on pushing them for their business goals. It's just that they've just had no capacity to do it. They've not actually had capacity to work on the business challenges and progress these things that we want to do to move the business forward. However, I do believe that there's always an opportunity to not work in the business but work on the business. There's always a way to pull out some time to focus on what's most important. We haven't gotten any further than that because I'm catching up with them later on this week, but this is a classic small business thing from my experience, Julie, where it's like I'm so busy delivering for clients, or I'm so busy doing the normal stuff, I'm not getting anything done, or nothing's moving forward. And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to brainstorm that, to see whether this is your experience, Julie, or whether I'm on an island, I'm on my own.
Oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. Every goal I make, I put strategy to it. I complete all the tasks and everything gets done perfectly. What are you talking about?
Julie is the yin to my yang.
Pardon?
Julie is the yin to my yang.
I can absolutely see that. And I think every business can see that. And it's like that Eisenhower Matrix, isn't it? That we've got all these important things that we can do. The Eisenhower Matrix, many people already know it, but you've either got things that are important and not urgent, important and urgent, not important, not urgent, not important, but urgent. So you've got these 4 categories of things. And the stuff that we get done every day ends up being the urgent stuff, not always the important and urgent stuff. And being aware of that, I think, is one helpful thing. That what do we need to do to push up that strategy or that goal list or whatever it is, the program. Did you call it a program?
Priorities. I think
the priority.
But I suppose that,
or let's just call it a process. And so what do we need to do to make sure that the process of sticking to strategy and achieving goals is both important and urgent? Because it's always going to be important. Ask any business owner out there, they'll know it's important. However, if it drops in urgency, it will drop in the priority list.
And so one of the arguments that often comes up, I think, and it's better to talk about the elephant than let it sit in our podcast and take up space, is, but I've got a client screaming at me and I need to hire a new team member, and I know I need to really look at that system because the team member is going to be inefficient without it. But so how do we really, what's a sort of framework, Julie, that we can help our listeners work through in order to know that it's important and urgent, and cope with the buts?
My natural answer here, I will deliver, and you can let me know whether I'm on the mark or not, or whether it's a useful system or not. So, step number 1 is recognizing what the goals are, and then having a brainstorming session with the team members that are going to be involved in it, and agreeing to 2 or 3 strategies that will help reach that goal, and then agree on the tasks that each of those strategies need in order to achieve that strategy, and then put somebody accountable to each of those tasks and put a date that they need to have the next little step done by. Then we make sure that we're meeting once a month, or once whatever period of time, but once a month. And what you were talking about, to get the scorecard. So recognize as well, what key performance indicators do we need to be tracking to make sure that this specific strategy is actually achieving progress towards our goal. Bring those KPIs or that scorecard to the monthly meeting, and we check in on progress. Is everyone getting their tasks done by the due date? What are the barriers to them getting them done? Let's overcome those barriers. Let's bring the figures to the table, or the whatever key performance indicator that we've selected to the table to make sure that this strategy is actually rolling out and rolling out effectively. And then I don't believe that's enough. I believe that a morning huddle every morning is a magnificent way of bringing back up the importance and urgency and creating that reminder to say, these are the things that we're all promised to get done this month. Make sure you're all on track. Remember, Sally, you're doing this, and Tom, you're doing that. Let's keep moving forward. And you've got that morning daily reminder around it as well.
I think you mentioned in our last one the morning huddle to build culture and teams. And so if you're curious to know more about that, go back to episode 18, which is about building cultures. So I think one of the things that you've said, which I think often creates challenge, is that the tasks to get stuff done are either too ambitious or undefined. Success is not defined very well in the experiences that I've had. I think that sometimes when we ask people to do things, what does success look like can be an arbitrary thing. And so this is where team members can often go off on a bit of a tangent, come back and deliver something that was not expected, or they don't deliver at all because they've gone well outside of the scope of expectation. So I think, and this is why we've kind of developed the acumen with this particular client around a project acumen, but with milestones of success really clearly defined. Because what we want to be able to do when we're talking about a task is it's either done or it's not done. There's no halfway. I mean, the halfway is it's in progress, but if it's not something that can be specifically ticked off as I have achieved that, then how do we know that we're on track to deliver what's expected?
I would suggest it would be the KPI is the indicator of what success looks like. For example, I mean, you know that I'm in the dental world, within dental practices, and if the goal is to increase turnover, and one of the strategies to increase turnover is to improve case acceptance rates in the surgery, then the key performance indicator is to track the current treatment plan acceptance rate in the surgery and continue tracking it after you've put in play the tasks that have been identified as the group to see if the KPI is indicating success, that you are increasing the number of cases that are being accepted in the surgery. And I think the specificity, so people don't go off on their own tangents, are the tasks, because the tasks are agreed upon with the group and they're very specific tasks.
That's exactly, you're just reinforcing what I said with a little bit more finesse. It's the tasks that bleed out, because I think there's a combination of things that can often happen. If the process of accountability isn't built into the everyday of the business, then there's often the bleed of, you're thinking about a junior team member. The reason why I want to go to a junior team member is I remember when I was first in business, and someone would give me an instruction, and then I'd start it, and then I'd get distracted, and I'd get to the end of the week, and I'd be like, I've been really busy, and I haven't finished that. I'll wait for someone to follow me up. And then the next week, if no one follows me up, then I'm going to assume it's not important. So then I'm going to get through the next week. And then often what happens is either it completely gets dropped off the list because there's no process around what are we doing and who's accountable and things like that, which goes to your meetings. But also then I think it's important that when we're looking at the goals and the tasks, the why behind them is really important as well, because if we don't know why we're doing it, then we're going to lose track of why it's important to spend time away from the business as usual activities to actually do it and get it done. So specificity around tasks so that they are very specific. Have you done it? Yes or no? Can we, what does the done mean? And there's a talk in regard to There's a methodology.
I was going to say, that's the sound of Shannon thinking. It's like the sounds of silence.
It is. It's just the cogs kind of.
Look difficult.
There's a methodology that some people would be familiar with, which is the Kanban project management methodology.
I have not heard of the Kanban. Is it like the can?
Anyway, after that interlude, Kanban is people who use Trello, and you're a Trello aficionado. You're essentially Kanbaning there, my darling. So
I felt like I was doing something there. I spent a lot of time on it.
So a little segue off, Kanban is a project management methodology that was invented in the car manufacturing places in Asia somewhere. I'm really going to offend people here, and I'm sorry, and I'm pretty sure it was Mitsubishi.
You look sure about it.
I can do some research, but just know that this is a well-used methodology. And what it is we have a backlog of stuff that needs to be done. Then we say, how many things can we do in our work in progress? And normally in Kanban, everything that's in progress is time limited to exactly the same unit, time or energy or effort, same unit, so that we know how many units we can run at the same time. And then before you move the in progress to done, you have to be able to answer the question of what does done look like? And I really like that language, like what does done look like? So it's really clear, there's no grey. It's either done or not done. So that specificity of tasks. And they do ask the question of what does done look like? Paint us a picture. What is done? What is fixed? So then you talked about the regular meetings and then morning huddles. Where do you experience businesses often go wrong okay, that all sounds great. It's not rocket science. We need to know what the goals are. We need to write down the tasks. We need to hold people accountable to it. Simples. Why do you think that's really logical? Like, I mean, that is not rocket science, but why do you think we get caught up and we don't get it done, even if there is a process in place? You know, we might be doing morning huddles, we sort of have the goals, but why do you think, Julie, in your experience, things get dropped off, or they don't get done, or they don't get progressed, or...
I think it's a combination of what you've said. Absolutely. It is the busyness of the day takes over importance and urgency. That is absolutely a key reason. Another reason is the complacency of some team members, where they don't fully get, I'm really responsible for this, and I've got a true role to play in this. I've been looking for the boundaries to bounce off, around that. I've been looking for the accountability to be thrust upon me around that, so I know exactly how much accountability I do have around it. So that's definitely an issue as well. But I think you need to have a primary person who is driving this strategy forward, this process forward. It doesn't always have to be the owner of the business. It just that person needs to have it very clearly handed to them. This is your baby. We're all accountable, but we're all going to take a process of getting to that accountability space, because to date, we haven't had, as part of our culture, that true responsibility over we've got responsibility over the tasks that we get done every day and rolling out our responsibilities, but not towards reaching the goals of the business. So what your job is to keep us on track and help us create the environment for everyone, so we all get how important, how urgent, and the reasons why we're doing this all the way through. So you're in charge in setting up the monthly meetings, making sure that our goals, strategies, tasks document is constantly flowing forward, that our Trello board, for example, is always being populated with updated information, that we are meeting every morning for our morning huddles so we can reignite everyone's passion around it every day until it becomes natural for us to be wary of it all every day and working on that every day. So I think one of the things where So I think one of the areas it does fall down is not having that one key person who's accountable that's helping create the environment for everyone.
So key person who's accountable. And when you said that,
they could, since you said Kanban, that key accountable person could be a CAP, key accountable person who's tracking the KPIs. So there could be CAP tracking the KPIs within the Kanban. That's a brand new system. We could write a book about that.
And we've just copyrighted that, so don't anyone think that you can do it. I'm just going to play with what you said there, and let's just see whether this adds value. When you said handing them over accountability, I got a vision of getting a puppy or a kitten. I'm going back to being a child here, because if any parents are listening, there's a point where, this was my experience anyway, so I'm going to assume that there's a similar experience somewhere out in the world. I kind of had a completely unique childhood.
Am I that weird? Is it just me?
But when a child says, I want a puppy or a kitten, and parent often gives puppy or kitten to the child and says, this animal comes with responsibilities. You've got to keep this animal alive. And what that means is you've got to make sure that they have water. You've got to make sure that they're fed. You've got to make sure that their bed is clean and their litter or they're taken for a walk. Now, with that child, it knows that this animal is their responsibility to make sure it's fed and watered and all the rest of it. Parent is going to be obviously double checking, because you don't really want to teach a child a lesson by letting it kill its animal. That would probably be a unique.
Wow, that was a harsh lesson for both the animal and the child.
Yeah. So you've got the animal, but I think the big thing is that there needs, so the why becomes very powerful, because the child then knows that when they get home from school, they're going to have to take the puppy for a walk, and there'll be a process around that. And they'll need to make sure when the puppy comes back, it's got a full water bowl, because it's going to be looking for it. So there is something driving the behavior there. There's also process around it. There's also someone else just double checking that everything's kind of happening from a higher level. And I'm going to guess that at some point there is also an accountability from the parent if the child is failing to feed the animal and water the animal. And it might be the reduction of privileges, or that the animal is no longer their responsibility, but they also don't get the benefits of having the animal sitting on their lap. And I'm making this up, but there's always some sort of, quite often there's always some sort of cost benefit for someone who's not actually following through with the accountability that's been given to them. So I suppose, did that story add value for you, Julie?
It did add value. And what I thought about that was, and I like that, because who's going to put their hand up in a working environment and say, yeah, I'll be the key accountable person, I'll be the CAP.
CAP for the keepers.
Because that's going to really set myself up for heavy scrutiny if we don't achieve all these goals. It's all on my shoulders. Who would ever put their hand up for that? And so I think that is a lovely analogy, because it indicates the level of support that role would need by the owner of the business, just like the child is adopting these new skills, and so has the support of the parent and is therefore safe to play with it, work in different ways, figure out what the best way to help that whole team become accountable for the goals achievement of the business. And especially if it's going to be a new role or a new project, if your business hasn't really stuck to very firm goals and strategies in the past, this is a new space for everyone. And so truly support that key performance indicator. So truly support that key accountable person in that new role and provide to them what they need in order to grow and make an effective system for themselves.
And there's one last thing that I didn't mention, which I'd like to add to. And I think this is my experience, is that this is the big missing part. That prior to, and we'll stay with this analogy if it's adding value, prior to getting the puppy, child would come home, dump the bag, turn on the TV until mum or dad or whoever says, hey, you need to do your homework, you need to read the book, you need to, whatever. Now, the process has changed because when child gets home, time needs to be allocated to take the dog for a walk. And this bites into the time between when the child gets home to when dinner is on the table and what have you. I think my perception is that often we don't think about the reallocation of time and that there needs to be an acceptance that this has to happen. We have to take time from somewhere to spend time somewhere else. So child would have to get home, dump bag, not turn on the TV because the dog's jumping all over the child at this stage. So it's like, right, okay, I'm going to put the dog on the lead. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to assume that the parent's going to go with the child, take the dog for the walk. That's half an hour of time, I'm going to guess, out in the sun, come back. Child might not get to watch TV then because child's got to go straight in and do homework and then parents putting dinner on the table. So something's gotten lost in the process. Some time has actually been having to take out. And I think my perception is that we don't often realise we've got to rob Peter to pay Paul somewhere in the mix. Do you agree, disagree?
I agree. And sometimes it's a value judgment. What's more important, the watching of the television or the feeding of the dog? The dog was the project and, I've got to make, and we love the dog. And so we are willing to make that sacrifice of television time to walk the dog. But in business terms, it might be, but the watching television bit, that was when I'm dealing with clients or doing sales or whatever. I wonder, I don't know if you remember, Shannon, on a previous episode, I can't remember which one it was, so listeners will have to listen to all of them to understand which one it is.
You've only got 18 other ones to listen to, listeners, but we can guarantee you'll have at least a bit of a smile on some of the episodes, and that is a money-back guarantee to you.
So Charles goes through this exercise for some of his coaching clients who have that, but we don't have time. I don't have time for self-improvement or self-awareness. I don't have time to adopt that new skill. And he takes them through Newsd. Newsd. I think he calls it something. I'm just going to call it Newsd because it's NEWSD. And you and I went through this. How much of your time is spent on necessities? And when I say necessities, I'm talking about showering, feeding yourself, doing your hair, making your bed. How many hours a day? And then we'll times that by the week. How many hours you do that? How much time do you spend exercising every day? We times that by 7 for the whole week. How many hours do you spend working? How many hours do you spend sleeping? And when people move through that process, they're quite surprised that the amount of time that's left over when you count up all the hours in a week, so therefore your discretionary time, the spare hours, are usually quite numerous. I know when I did this process, even though I work around 60 hours a week, my discretionary time is 40 hours a week. That's a full-time job. And I think you were about the similar kind of number of hours, Shannon. And so when we think we don't have time, when we really take apart where we spend our time in the week, we do have time. And I'd be intrigued if a exercise similar to that, but to the workplace, if we did that, if we actually indeed would find times where we can start concentrating on other things, so-called discretionary time would appear.
It really is about prioritizing it as important. Brian Tracy has the book, Eat That Frog. And the idea of that one is to find the thing that you don't want to do and do that first. Now, I'm not going to proclaim that it's a good strategy. It works for some people. Some people, if you're not getting anything done, do the tiniest thing, get a little dopamine hit, and do the next thing, get a little dopamine hit, and that can build a bridge to doing more things. It's not so much that, but it's about, if this is important, the frog needs to be put into the schedule somewhere. One of the things that I think that we don't take enough advantage of is breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. I know for me, I'm way too optimistic when I try and achieve a task. And it'll either, when I'm way too optimistic, I get none of it done. And when I think that something's when I think that something's just a short thing, often I'll get lots of things done. And I do wonder whether giving permission to say, I'm allocating just an hour across the week. So an hour across the week is actually 15 minutes for 4 days. So can I find 15 minutes over 4 days to do an hour of this work? Now, you're probably not going to get into the depths of achieving things with that sort of approach, but it could happen. If you knew what to do within those 15-minute brackets and you could do a component of the 1 hour work within those 15-minute brackets, would you get it done? Yes, you would. So I do believe that a lot of it is around the mindset of getting done. Because
I like that.
For example, another little analogy, but it's a Shannon story, so just indulge me. I know that I will be successful when someone comes to my house and folds my washing. I think that washing being folded is the most benign activity. Yes, it gets a reward when it's all folded, but the reality is that as soon as you folded it, you unfold it, and then for it to be in any use whatsoever, you've got to refold it. Like, it's such a waste. And so my washing basket is the bane of my existence. So I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll fold that washing later. So let's get it out of the dryer. Sorry, not environmental running. And I will dump it in the washing basket, and I'll go, I'll come back to that. Now, inevitably, the washing basket becomes the elephant in my room, because I'm like, oh, I need some socks. Diving in. Kind of like, trying to get through it to get the socks. And of course, then you've got to match up the socks. And I've spent, 5 minutes trying to find the socks. And we're not talking about the rest of the outfit here.
Gosh, you got a hard life, Shannon. This is challenging stuff. Keep going.
I wonder if our listeners would be okay if I just lay down and we could talk through my emotional issues. Probably has something to do with my upbringing that is somehow unique. So what I did recently, Julie, because the washing was out of control, is I took the washing out of the dryer and I folded it there and then, and I timed myself. And it took me about 7 minutes to fold a load of washing. Now, my brain just went, oh, Shannon, you spend 7 minutes a day stressing about trying to find socks in the washing basket. So sometimes the overwhelming thing can be broken down into bite-sized, achievable things, because once we do it, especially if you can time it, especially if you think, oh, I'm spending so long doing this thing, if you can time it or time block it, I think that can add a lot of value. And I've had to change my mindset around this overwhelming basket.
I agree with you. I think mindset is a huge part of it. And you and I have spoken before about when I started just telling myself that I was super productive every single day, and I went through a few not meditations, but more repeated affirmations in a lot of periods of time. I don't really need to do it anymore because I've just got it in my brain now. I'm super productive. I became super productive. I get a lot done every day, and I'm really impressed with myself most of the time. Where I used to be going, oh, I should have got more done. And also, so I think the mindset around whether you are a productive person or not, or a productive team or not, I think that's important, because what you focus on grows. And so why would you sit back and say, yeah, no, we never get all these bits and pieces done. We always let goals fly out the window. Well, in that case, that's what you're going to be doing every single time. So shift your mindset, whether it's true or not at the start, doesn't matter. Just, tell yourself that you're super productive. I think that's a key element of it. But also catch yourself when you say, I just don't have time for that, and remind yourself that that's bullshit. that if you're thinking to yourself, there is no time to put that in, you won't find time to put that in. But if you say, well, everything's flexible, let's find a time to put that in, it's a different mindset that you're approaching your calendar with. And one other element around it I wanted to quickly mention was what you were talking about, allocating those 15 minutes over a 4-day period. Use the systems that are around you, the devices that are around you, such as your iPhone, Google Calendar, whatever you need. So you can actually allocate time for things throughout your day rather than have your day just happen haphazardly. But also you're getting those reminders. Remember, you've got a deadline in a week to get that thing done. Have that as a reminder every day so it's top of mind awareness.
Mm. So, Julie, we're running out of time. How's about we wrap things up and see if there's any extra value bombs that we get out of this?
That sounds like a fair idea.
Fantastic. Okay, so we sort of talked about the challenge of working on the business, in the business, and that we often don't, that business owners quite often don't spend the time getting things that are the on the business activities done because we're so busy stuck in the business. And we talked about making sure that the goals are clear. You talked about making sure that tasks to achieve the goals were defined and that there was a responsibility and a due date put on them. You suggested having a monthly meeting, I think a monthly or fortnightly or even weekly meeting if it's important enough to the business, because you want to remind people that this is important. You talked about the morning huddles and that daily reminder of that this is important. We talked about the dog. And I think the importance of the dog is it relays something that you've said to me, which I think is so effective, Julie, about if you're going to give a child a responsibility, would you do it without giving them some sort of context on why is this important? How do you do it? Making sure they're doing it effectively. You wouldn't. So same sort of thing in the business with this. You want to make sure that they know why, that they know what success looks like, that you're supporting them. The key responsible.
CAP. The CAP. The key accountable person.
The key accountable person is a great idea. That way, as a business owner, it's not your responsibility. It's your responsibility to make sure that your CAPs are doing their stuff, but not necessarily the buck stopping with you in terms of doing the work or following people up. And also making sure that you're allocating time and energy with a great mindset in order to achieve the tasks. That's what we talked about in terms of getting fruit done.
Fantastic summary. You know how much I love your summaries. It's just tremendous. I don't even know where I never notice you writing things down as we're going. I'm always impressed when you start reading for a piece of paper that seems like it's completely filled with your notes.
Julie, this is what I was reading off.
You're remarkable. I love it.
No, but it was empty.
I want the remarkable.
It was empty. It was just sponged in my head. No, I'm just joking. There was notes there.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. As always, an absolute joy and pleasure. I hope people enjoyed it as much as we did.
Well, even if they didn't, I've enjoyed my time with you. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll see you next time.
And I will see you next time. And listeners, if you are listening to us, you can see us on our YouTube channel. We're very entertaining in real life, more so than on the podcast, I think.
Yeah, you get to see all the facial expressions and Shannon's thinking face, which is quite intense.
It was today, but Julie's probably going to edit that out.
No, I'm going to leave that in because I thought that was Sounds of Silence comment for me was hilarious around you. The sound of Shannon thinking, sound of silence.
Anyway, on that note, listeners, catch you next time. Thank you, Julie.
Okay. See you next time. Ciao.